Hey there, Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here, and it's been an interesting few days to say the least. Trying to find my way around the different platforms about where I'm going to land. Not sure yet. I'm going to still stay the course we're on now, and I'm going to try to avoid some of the conflict that got me in this position in the first place. But as some of you said, oh, well, Dave, just continue to post your missing person video here. I'm not going to give YouTube two craps of opportunity to make more money off of me when they don't respect your rights. One thing I think that one side has forgotten and is very short-sighted is there's ebb and flow in our world. And right now, I would say that the majority of everything in our world is going another direction. It's going towards a side of radicals, and they're getting their way. There's going to be a change. And when that happens, you know what will happen to us. Is you remember all of those 574 riots that we had year before last? And that's the way that some people respond. We don't yell, we don't scream, we don't destroy people's businesses, we don't destroy towns, we don't try to destroy a courthouse. And I don't care what anybody says. Those 574 incidents need to be investigated. And the people that did that destruction and broke into those businesses and stole people's belongings need to be held accountable. And I don't see that happening right now. In the last week, I've probably had at least 20 righteously atrocious emails come my way from people calling me names, saying I'm doing things on the channel that I'm not doing, saying I'm doing things that I've never done on any channel, and calling me names that I would never call my worst enemy. And that's one side of the equation. That's one side of our humanity that I want nothing to do with. And they wonder why I won't waste any time on them. That's why. Because they can't treat people with dignity and respect. I'd love to have a debate with that side. I would love it. But it would be a debate with facts. I'd want an administrative law judge there. And just based on facts. Not opinions, not on feelings. Just on facts. On certain things here. Because I know facts prevail. Every time I've asked somebody on my site or an email I get about what I've done that they're claiming I did, they can never explain it. They'll call me more names, then they'll give me the big middle finger, and then they'll leave. It's a crazy world we're in right now. Really crazy. And there's a few people out there that have said that, hey, I don't agree with your views, but I do agree that you have a right to say them. But even those people, I have a tough time with it because I'm not stating a view. I'm giving you some series of facts. I'm going to give you some facts today, too. So, please be patient. Please be polite. And whatever you do, don't turn me off because you don't like the facts I gave you. If you think that there's some facts that I'm missing out, well then tell me. But don't say, I feel, or I think, or I wish you wouldn't. No, those aren't going to cut it here. Now eventually I'm going to leave YouTube, and I'm working on that hard. And when I leave them behind, I'll leave them behind them in the dust. because there's been enough people that have responded that have said that they will financially support me if I go to another platform. Now, what will that other platform include? Live interaction. I'll do live reports. I'll do live stories. I'll interact online with you. I'll allow you to ask questions. I'm going to try to make myself more available on that new platform, wherever that is. And I think that will give you more access, and it'll break down a lot of these barriers. And the biggest thing to me, I know all of these rude and obnoxious people that send me these comments won't pay to come over. So I can free myself up to deal with all of the polite, nice people that are out there. And those are you, and I appreciate it. So let's get to some letters today that are very interesting. First of all, somebody sent me an English translation of an article from Germany. And it said the lockdown consequences, child suicide attempts quadrupled. The article is dated January 8th of this year, 2022. A still preliminary study by the University Hospital in Essen, Germany, has revealed a significant increase in suicide attempts with consequences requiring intensive care treatment among children. Intensive care physician Professor Donna Schweik suspects that COVID restrictions are the cause of this development. Up to 500 children had to be treated in intensive care units nationwide after suicide attempts between March and the end of May. That's just 3 months. As a result of a study by the Essen Hospital. The number of cases had thus increased by around 300% during that time of the second lockdown compared to the time before COVID. At the end of the second lockdown, 450 to 500 children were treated for a suicide attempt with serious consequences in the 27 pediatric intensive care units involved in and included in the study. As to possible causes, every once in a while I'm going to take a drink to clear my throat on you. And again, I've told you about this drink before, and I don't get paid. I'm not compensated for anything ever. This is just a drink called stevia. And stevia is a cola-flavored drink with no sugar, and it's flavored by an ingredient called stevia, which is natural, by the way. And it has no diabetic load, sugar load on it. They have about 10 different flavors. I like them. Not all of them, but they're okay. Better than drinking a soda. So as to possible causes, the physician referred to the long and repetitive lockdowns that would have particularly burdened children who had already suffered from depression or anxiety disorders. On the basis of the study submitted for international publication, his recommendation is therefore to keep schools open as long as possible. The study findings are still preliminary, pending peer review. It covers about 18 to 20% of all intensive care beds for children in Germany. That's a very comprehensive piece of work right there. And it's a good barometer about what's going on in the rest of the world. It's not just in the US. These lockdowns are worldwide, have the same effect on kids. And the part that really, really rankles me is the teachers are refusing to go back to work. It bugs me bad. Because they should be caring about the mental health and the education of the students they serve. People have sent me notes saying, oh, but the teachers aren't making the decision. That's 100% a lie. 70+% of the Chicago teachers, according to NBC Chicago, 70+% refuse to go back into in-person teaching. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. You are getting paid to teach. The Biden administration gave you in excess of $1.75 billion to the Chicago teachers to retrofit their buildings. That was 10 months ago. You have the money, go back to work. You shouldn't be getting paid. If you don't want your job, leave. I have no patience for this. First responders have still been working. All of us. Not me, but all of them. You don't see Chicago policemen and Chicago firemen not going to work. And they have the same interaction with people as teachers do, because they're dealing with the entire public service out there. Young men, old men, everybody, every day. They don't have a choice. I've told you many, many months ago that the true victims in this pandemic are going to be young people and them taking their lives. And once the study's done, it will shake the world, because it'll eventually come out. Now, one thing that came across the wires just recently that's very interesting is through a Freedom of Information Act request filed by National Park Traveler magazine. These are the incidents of the number of search and rescues from 2018 to 2020. The number one location for the most search and rescues, Grand Canyon National Park, 785. Yosemite, 732. Sequoia and Kings Canyon, 503. When you group two national parks together, I don't think that's right. I think they ought to be separated. Yellowstone, 371. Rocky Mountain National Park, 341. Zion, 285. This is high to low. Then it goes Glen Canyon, Grand Teton, Olympic, 204. Arches, Great Smoky Mountains, 198. Glacier National Park, 165. Mount Rainier, 146. And then one on this list at number 14, place I never heard of. And I'm embarrassed to say it, I've never heard of it. It's called Jewel, Jewel Cave National Monument. It's in South Dakota, right near the Wyoming border, about 5-10 miles west of the border. And they had 133 search and rescue incidents during that time span. I was blown away. For a small location like that, to have that many calls. Whew. Now, back when I was first getting into filing Freedom of Information Act requests against the National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, etc., over missing person cases, I started to sit around with a group of highly brilliant people, way smarter than me. We started to talk about the problem of search and rescue, specifically how it applied to the thousands of cases we reviewed, and how at least once a year there is a huge search and rescue case somewhere in the United States. Many times the victim is not found, and it seems as though the cases are similar in that they follow the profile points that we've established. Now, the Park Service has never made those profile points a commonality in their descriptions. I did that. But a lot of the mistakes that are made upon review of the search and rescue are made over and over and over again, because each individual park or location is in charge of that search. And there's a very good chance that the person who's in charge of that search has never been involved in a big search in their life. And they're learning as they go. A lot of luck comes into play. So if you're a family and you have a person who hasn't done this before, doesn't have good resources where they're at, doesn't understand the system, doesn't have the ability to get military personnel there, say, could be a long week for you. So we sat around and we discussed it, and over several months worth of brainstorming, here's the recommendations we came up with. That there needs to be a new federal agency that covers fire response, fire suppression, and search and rescue. What do we mean by that? Well, first of all, in the last 10 years, there have been some monster fires in the United States and Canada. And those monster fires are handled differently depending on the jurisdiction and how fast you can get response to them, air support, etc. Same thing with search and rescue. We need to have a group of highly trained, highly professional search and rescue and fire response team, aerial, that can go in immediately to these exploding fires and searches. That was a recommendation we made about 6 years ago. This agency has to have primary authority over any jurisdiction they go into, which means that if they go into a national park, they have jurisdiction over the national park employees and over the special agents that work in the parks. Why is this important? Again, because they have the expertise and the location doesn't. Here's what I mean by this. I told you before that I was one of the police officers that was called up and worked the poly class kidnapping case in Northern California. And we were called in because the special agent in charge of that event was a former regular police officer who went to the FBI. And he was put in charge of this child abduction task force response team. And he knew that the police officers had experience talking to hardened criminals way more than his agents did. And he also knew that we had street level experience of going out and pounding the ground, looking for people, talking to people, getting people to talk, etc. So he wanted a group of law enforcement people on that task force, and he called myself and another sergeant up. We went up. But that child abduction response team by the FBI is the same sort of theory that we proposed on missing people on federal land. It's needed. And I know our government says, well, they don't have the money, but you know how many billions of dollars are wasted on crap. And this could actually be something good. And the land that this agency would be in charge of is all federal land. U.S. Forest Service, Department of the Interior. Monuments, national parks, it doesn't matter. They'd be in charge of all of it. Criteria would be a missing child immediately. If a child goes missing and they're not found immediately, they put this team on standby and then they're flying out the next day. Missing child or sustained missing adult, immediate response. And this team would be flown point to point wherever they're stationed at. And I'd probably station them someplace near the center of the U.S. Maybe Colorado, Kansas, somewhere in that area, so that the response time wouldn't be long either direction. But they'd be flown point to point by military transport. Military would be ordered to support this effort. And a big thing, a big thing. A lot of people don't know this, but we have spy satellites that fly over the United States and fly over our United States and keep track of us. And those spy satellites, from satellite level, can focus in their optics and they could read a license plate from space. True. Now, why aren't these technologies used on missing people searches? Yes, good question, Dave. Do you know when we have drone technology that goes after a terrorist in another country, we can identify the terrorists on the ground in those other countries, give them the GPS coordinates from our satellite, and they go in and get them. Well, why can't we do this on a good cause, like helping missing people? There was a story that was told to me about 9 years ago. There's a big federal facility just outside Denver. And on this federal facility, there's a lot of different federal agencies. The story told to me is that a person who worked at this facility occasionally had to go to this one building. And this one building, they were never allowed to go into the back room. They could only go to the front office. Well, this one person they got to be friends with, and on their last day, this person invited my contact into the back room. And they asked the contact, they said, "Hey, where do you want to go?" They said, "What do you mean?" "Name a place in the world you really want to see." I said, "What do you mean?" "Just name any place." So I think they named some place like Niagara Falls or somewhere. And he went into a room, came out a few minutes later, and on this giant screen in front of her that she didn't even realize was a giant screen, up comes a live picture of the falls. She says, "My God, what is this?" And he said, "It's our technology from satellites. This is a room where we can monitor things. You can't ask any questions, but just know that it exists." Wow. And that person contacted me because she wanted to know why this room isn't used for search and rescue. Well, a brilliant question, to say the least. So part of our response is that this technology is made available, and it's criminal that it's not available now. And I say this with hesitancy, but there probably should be an FBI member or two assigned to this team, because as we know, the FBI has some knowledge of what's going on because they've gone to so many of these cases and they've written reports. They know what's going on. They might be able to help. Last note was FEMA has a rapid response team. And the model that they use for their response and their readiness needs to apply to this team as well. I'd be glad to go to Congress and lay out this whole plan, because somebody needs to be paying attention. And over the course of many years, this team would save a lot of lives. And it would raise the professionalism of search and rescue and fire suppression to a new level. So, that's my recommendation on that. Okay, next letter. Dave, looking into your eyes today on January 9th, I saw what so many of us are suffering through. Being almost shunned when one asks a fair question feels the serious urge to ask more questions about things that are not making sense. I'm actually frightened at the amount of not really good souls taking their lives, averting their eyes, and pushing on nervously just to complete a day. It makes me sad to watch, but I try my best to speak up with the couple closest in my world. Suffering from maddening anxiety and depression sprinkled with addiction issues, please trust me when I type. I know well the daily struggle. Whether that is to keep kicking, staying sober, scream at the world, or just drop to my knees and cry out each and every bit of sadness held inside. I know there's many of you out there that already kind of fit that bill. I get it. There's a lot of us that struggle with depression. I've never had depression like I've had the last year. It's not overwhelming, but it's always there. And I've said this before and I'll say this again. Nothing good in the long term has ever come from alcohol. I've never been a big drinker. I understand that there's an alcoholic type gene that we all have, or some have and some don't. And I get that. I would just say to you that if you're a young person, nothing good ever came from drinking. Maybe soda. At 43 years of age, I feel as though my puzzle should have come into focus years ago. Mental illness is the most serious issue we have on planet Earth. Not a soul can argue that, but multiple souls can help to repair it. A lot talk, but stand still. Because when there is a hero that wishes to help, the powers that be given so much red tape run around in the hope of fatigue and failure. I have a very good friend that deals with the Veterans Administration all the time. And the amount of red tape they throw in front of a veteran trying to get help for various issues is frigging ridiculous and disgusting that the veterans have to go through that. We all should need to unite and begin to repair such soul destruction and assassination. The amount of time that remains, which cannot be much, is very minimal. Being bullied to conform to rules largely based on opinion and political gain. That is what occurred when greed saw an opportunity to manipulate their advantage. It was taken, as we all gave it away. If transparency does not tower at the top of each of our demand lists, what is the point? Fellow villagers, to have sat and watched Dave in emotional distress, twisted, we are not allowed to voice an opinion. A man trying to help humanity become better in a positive manner, to educate novice folk wanting an adventure. Remembering the lost like no other, keeping names in the stories attached, the unforgotten. Compassion, one who reports actual facts and cares about the words he is arranging, as he is conveying a story or a topic. I am not sorry, I am frustrated. It is disturbing and not who we all are as human beings. Telling everyday normal people, stop asking questions and just do what everyone else is doing. Do what they are told. We are judged negatively, talking about subjects that make some others uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with that being uncomfortable, just as there is nothing wrong with some of us discussing uncomfortable topics. Uncomfortable topics. I can remember when I was young and my dad sat down with me. I can remember this. And we had that birds and the bees discussion. The funny thing is, by the time he talked to me, I'd have heard it all, seen it all. Buddies always talked about it. It was nothing new, but it was one of those uncomfortable topics. Just like I have told you many times, having a mental health topic discussion with your friend or relative is wholesomely good. Don't be afraid to talk about taking a life. And as I've stated before, if you think you're going to put that topic in somebody's head, no. People think about this all the time. And by you opening up and showing you're susceptible to the conversation, you may be saving a life. On never have I forced a single person or group to bend to my will and listen to what I have to say. The epic discussions I've had been with great friends, friends of friends, relatives, and their friends. Where is that now? How can we restore such great human camaraderie? Why is that such a negative narrative to investigate? A hell of a great goal, if you ask me. I do not enjoy the sadness lingering in people's eyes. One observes this far too often. Still, it feels like a separation campaign with no talking and detention after class for thinking. I want you to think about this. If I saw you somewhere and you just had seen me on YouTube, let's say you see me at a conference walking around and go, hey, Dave, do you mind if I talk to you about this? As long as I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to say, sure. And you start talking to me on a topic, you will be fairly certain I'm not going to attack you for bringing up a topic. But there's a segment of our population that can't deal with a conflicting opinion. And that is part of our issue. And the way they deal with that is belittling, yelling, screaming, attacking. Not with facts, with emotion, with illogic, without empathy. And I don't know how that got started. And I don't understand that. Back to the letter. All of North America needs to work together. Sure as shit, we need to thank studs. I don't know about this part. Studs like DP for putting himself out there, for caring, for helping. Thank you, Mr. Dave. You have helped me in ways that I wish I could articulate with words. Humanity can't give in or up. Paying attention wherever the Can-Am missing project can inform without persecution. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that is a lot of the turmoil I am feeling. Because there is such a large number of people out there that feel the need to bully and control rather than allow open dialogue, free speech, and debate. That controlling, bullying behavior has pushed many people into the background and afraid to talk. Many of you are afraid to post responses that some of these bullies post on the videos. I could see it. And I know that the count's probably 999 to 1, but this person puts an obscene comment up and I'm the one that responds to it, and all of you are afraid to. I think it's a fascinating look at social interaction. The times that people have responded en masse shuts it down. But as long as those people see a glimmer of light out there that they can attack and they can get to me, they're going to try. New letter. Dave, I wrote this refutation of the Drake, D-R-A-K-E, Drake equation. I anticipate that eventually the lie will be propagated that E.T. seeded the earth and created man. Parentheses, which by the way will accomplish nothing as pertains to the ontological question, if they created us, who created them? The underlying premise within the Drake equation is this: biological evolution is true and is the mechanism responsible for the origin of life. Let's examine this premise. This is a good one. First, Darwin only explains small adjustments by which an organism adapts to local circumstances, not the emergence of a new species. For new life, you need the information to make the protein molecules. You need code in the form of information inscribed along the spine of the DNA molecule. Crikey, who discovered DNA? With Watson? And was a code breaker in World War II, said the chemical subunits of DNA were functioning like alphabetic characters in a written language. Their specific arrangement gave them their function. Whenever we find information, computer code, a radio signal, a book, or hieroglyphics, it always heads back to a mind, not a material process. Get that again. It always leads back to a mind, not a material process. A single cell of unfathomable complexity. Just the protein in teratom combinations, protein to protein, dash 10 to 79 billion combinations, and just one is functional. There are 3,000 proteins in the simplest yeast cell, and you still need all of the DNA and RNA and carbohydrates. You need all of that code. More information is stored in the carbohydrates on the cell's surface than within the DNA and RNA combined. Physicists say there are 10 to the 90th elemental particles in the universe. The math says it all. Information comes from minds. Lots of ways to describe scale here. How about this? Before you'd get the first cell through biological evolution, our sun would cease to be a main sequence star and incinerate the earth. So the Drake equation is decidedly false. If we have been created by mind, I'd begin by calling that mind God. And actually, there's a book that tells this story. The Bible. Lawrence Krauss can take his multi-universe theory and put it back on the shelf marked Celestial Teapots. John Lennox. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate the work. Another Patriot brother. It's things like that that make you think. And I know that there's a lot of deep thinkers out there. And that's really the group I am playing to right now. I don't care about those people that can't keep up, can't think critically, don't use facts. In my mind, I was trying to be nice to them, and I'll always be nice to people, but I was trying to be overly patient, and I've lost my patience. Based on a series of emails I got this week and the strike I got, no more patience. They write something obscene, they're gone. It's my new thought pattern. New email. Dave, I've written once before to you, and I do at times leave comments on your YouTube channel. Look, you may think little of this small story, and that's fine, but for me it looks like another piece to the puzzle. I'm based in Ireland and would regularly purchase items from Amazon UK. I've been a customer for several years. A few months ago I purchased a Huawei, Huawei smartwatch and an accessory piece for it. I left a review regarding the accessory piece describing it as, quote, cheap and tacky. Just today I went to leave a review on the watch and was informed that I could not leave one due to, quote, unusual reviewing activity, under quotes, by the Amazon review moderation team. I queried this and I was somewhat annoyed by asking what they constituted, quoting, unusual reviewing activity. And that I thought their approach was over the top. Their reply was that they had removed one or more reviews due to some unusual viewing activity on my account. They also stated that they could not share any further information on the issue and may not reply to further emails. Gosh, sounds just like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Dave, I'm sure you're right when you say China have spread their wings around the world. Oh, they have. I replied stating now that I have been told it was more than one review that had been reviewed and removed, and that my initial question had not been answered. I also said I could only assume that being American-based and having close ties with the Democratic Party, that they were tossing the smallest of reviews aside because only one review point matters, and that I would be canceling my subscription. Dave, I'll follow you on your new platform anywhere. I may as well support you rather than Amazon. And lastly, Dave, I'm old enough to remember when UFO investigators were ridiculed and attacked investigating the truth. This relates to you as well. So I know you have battened down the hatches and you're well prepared for what's to come. Well prepared? Maybe not well prepared, but I am prepared. And I get it. And as I see it, friends, it's the village against them. And we need to get more people into that village. And we will. New letter. I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, but you read the story about the person missing in Hawaii. I was in Hawaii for a semester on the Big Island, and I met some locals who told me a story about the night marchers. Seems like the Hawaiian equivalent of lights in the wilderness at nighttime, and they were thought to be anything but benevolent. The story was sort of like, if you see them, it's too late. I'm sorry for the story is available on the internet, but at the time I was not widely known, and neither was the folklore. I actually wrote about this quickly. So Angie had gone to Hawaii with her kids, and she had met a Hawaiian elder who knew a lot of the history of the island, and he briefly told a fraction of the story about the night marchers. And she said, Dave, we got to go and you got to interview this guy. So planned a trip and made the arrangement, and we met him at a restaurant. He's a fascinating guy. And he talked about how these night marchers come out of the mountains at night, and you can see the glow like they're holding torches. And they'll come down to the beach, and you can't look at them. If you do, you could disappear. You could die. and you're supposed to bury your head in your arms and don't look. It was an interesting story. There's much more to it, and I wrote a long chapter about it. But I thought it was fascinating. And I'd heard it years before, but never at the level or the accuracy that this man had told us. So thanks. Thanks for the reminder. Next story, Dave. I've been watching your YouTube channel for a bit over a year now, and I'm impressed with the work you're doing. I also hold you and Ben in my regular prayers. Thank you. As a father of 5, I know what it means to love a son or daughter. My heart goes out to you. Be assured that I was dismayed and surprised by the censorship that occurred yesterday. I support you completely. Do what you believe is right. I'm probably one of the many who would pay a monthly or annual subscription to support your work. I'm all in. You have produced a lot of content that I've yet to watch, and I'm looking forward to doing so. It's important work. We need to insist on our right to speak and be heard, to write and to be read, and to act according to the dictates of our conscience. If our prevailing tech oligarchs can't handle that, too bad. We will prevail in spite of the embarrassing insecurity betrayed by their efforts. Stay strong. We are with you. Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you. It makes me stronger to hear that there are these people on the outside that think like we do and have that conviction that we have and know that we have to step up. Thanks. Next letter. Your video tonight was tough to watch. You're definitely not a nobody. You're the opposite of a nobody. You're a truly exceptional, admirable human being. You have done so much to bring attention to missing people in various parts of the world, and of itself is an extremely meaningful, purposeful endeavor. Dealing with the disappearance of a loved one seems like it would be one of the most agonizing pains one could experience, especially those who are never found. Your work not only helps bring comfort, hope, and reassurance that a loved one's life mattered, but it continues to open the eyes of so many, bringing us closer and closer to maybe one day finding out what's going on and how to stop it. Your ongoing education about how to safely visit national parks has also been extremely helpful. I can't imagine how many lives you've impacted and potentially saved by providing this information. I'm relieved that you're looking into moving away from YouTube, as the recent content you're putting out, especially topics on mental health, China, COVID, etc., in my opinion, are just as important as your missing 411 work. You are an incredible researcher and an incredible storyteller, so hearing this information from someone who already has my respect and has established credibility from the 411 work is much valued. In a time when fact-based speech often runs counter to the mainstream media and government narrative, it takes character to do what you're doing. You could just as easily focus on the missing 411 work and potentially retain your YouTube status. However, you're not willing to compromise on free speech and the truth. I admire and respect that. Remember this. You have mentioned that people have complained about being unsubscribed from your channel many, many times. Probably thousands of times. There's no doubt in my mind that you have been censored via shadow banning for some time. The same thing is undoubtedly happening to you on Twitter. Who knows how large your following could be if you were to detach yourself from these platforms, imposing various censorship tactics on you. Your son would never want you to have or be censored, just as all those who have come to know your work and you wouldn't. You will be better off, and I believe have a greater reach when you're away from them once and for all, and no longer a victim of their shadow banning and other forms of censorship. If I were you, I would just use your YouTube channel and Twitter to advertise where to go and how to do it. Put out a video every week letting people know people who subscribe to you on YouTube are going to miss your weekly insights, and with a weekly reminder, I'm confident they will make their way to wherever you end up. Let's hope that's true. Speaking of, I've been researching a suitable migration solution for you lately based on your required criteria and free speech, the content being yours and being able to monetize, preferably through ads. Now, I would prefer to go to a site where I can monetize the video with advertisements just like YouTube does. But every site that offers advertising similar to YouTube is in its infancy. And I've interviewed people who have gone over to these sites and put their videos up, and it's pennies on the dollar compared to what YouTube pays. It's not even worth their time, and they've stopped uploading. So there's the conundrum. There is no place to monetize where you could make anything close to what YouTube does. Now let's think about that. So YouTube was obviously making a ton of money off of me. And the real question is, if they're shadow banning me and they're controlling the numbers, how much money should I really be making? And I've heard other people that have left YouTube and gone out on their own, and things have just blown up in a positive way. So I think that what this person's saying could be true. Unfortunately, the result is that I'd probably have to go to a subscriber-based platform where you pay so much per month to have access to the videos. And I realize that some of you may not be able to afford that. Now, I put out a questionnaire in my last video under the #1 pinned comment right at the top of the comment section. And I asked what everyone would be willing to pay. And there's a long line there. You can kind of get a feeling about what everyone believes to be that pay range. And I appreciate everyone participating. And I'm blown away by the number of people who said that they would. So thank you. Back to the letter. So you should look into a place called Locals and a BitChute account. Locals, I'm sure you're aware, is a free speech platform. There's a lot of free speech platforms. That's okay. That'd be easy to find. You can make all your videos free and then mention in your posts and videos about where the missing 411 cause is in your various websites. You can set a minimum amount, etc. People are very much behind the 411 mission, and I believe that you would feel a great sense of purpose to be part of the funding of that said mission. Thank you. Folks, I've successfully stayed away from controversial topics, I believe. And we're going to go into the missing cases now. Now, last week, I talked about cases in Hawaii. So when I was doing the research on the islands, there was a set of 3 cases in a very short period of time that caught my attention. And I'm going to call this the Hawaii Special Edition. And it involves a series of cases in 94 and 95 that really rocked Hawaii's world, Oahu specifically. And it rocked it for a number of reasons that you're going to understand. Now, I've told you before that when I worked at San Jose Police, my best friend was a man named Gordon Silva, police officer, who was killed in a shootout downtown. And I was sent to Oahu because that's where his mom lived, kind of be the escort for the body and for the services. I got to know a bunch of HPD officers, their command staff, just a great group of people. At the time, the police chief in Oahu was a San Jose State grad. That was funny because it's obviously in the middle of our city, my city at the time. But, and then I worked with a person for a while when I was teaching. There was a time when I was a policeman where on weekends I taught traffic school. It was a pretty fun job because it was paid real well. And they got to know you at a different level when you sit with 30 people from the public for an all-day session on a Saturday. And I know from my reviews I was very well received, and I think they had a different opinion about the police when they were done with me for that day. And one of those people I taught with left and went and became a police lieutenant in Oahu. So I kind of feel like I have some attachment there, and I respect what they do a lot. So, first case I'm going to talk to you about, June 29th, 1994, about 12:30 p.m. That's when it happened. The man's name was Simon Owen. He was 21 years old. He was a senior at Wesleyan University in Texas. He'd taken that summer off, and he got a job at Chili's in downtown Oahu. Well, Simon was an outdoorsman, loved to get out. He wanted to get to know the community. He wanted to get into the mountains. He had a bike, and he rode everywhere. He routinely took trips really deep into the wilderness. He wanted to explore everywhere. Well, on June 29th, he rode his bike to the base trailhead at a place called Manoa Falls. I'll show you what Simon looked like here. Embed that in your brain. Well, on July 1st, 94, Simon didn't report to Chili's, and they reported him missing. And a couple of his friends contacted his roommates and his family, and they found some people that knew that he was going to go to this Manoa Falls area. So the police went out, they started to look for him, and they found his bicycle locked at the bottom of the base trail. And it was locked to some trees right near the trail. And then the police started looking more, and they found a witness that found Simon, or saw Simon, swimming in the falls, in the pool at the bottom. He got out and he asked these people, how do you get to the top of the falls? He wanted to climb up there and see the top. Well, these people told him. Well, when these people saw that he was reported missing, they came forward and told the police what they knew. Well, on July 6th, they sent in 6 different HPD dog teams, and they searched that area. And they didn't find anything. They didn't find any tracks. They didn't find a scent trail. They didn't find nothing. On July 7th, 40 U.S. Army soldiers from the 25th Infantry Division went in there and searched everything, everywhere. Covered it like a glove. Ross Perot, the billionaire, heard what was happening, heard that they needed more helicopter time, and he contacted the family of Simon and ordered that he pay the bill for more helicopter time. A grand gesture. On August, after 6 days of 6 days of searching, they don't find anything. And they ended up giving up the search and rescue. So, let me tell you where this is at. So, Oahu is right over here. Not very far, maybe 10, 15 miles away the crow flies. He went into this area, and this is where they found his bike. Now, the other side of the coast is just over this mountain, maybe 5 or 10 more miles. So he's kind of in the middle of the land of Oahu, on the other side of Diamond Head. Manoa Falls. Well, on the 11th of August, same year, 94, the parents were able to get the U.S. Marines to go in and spend a couple days looking. Didn't find anything. And there was a 2005 article in the Honolulu Bulletin about this disappearance and how strange it was and how unusual it was because they didn't find anything. It was horrible. If you think about it, so they brought in multiple canine teams. They brought in the military to search on U.S. soil for a missing person. Pretty unusual. Point of separation. He was with people when he got out of the water, and he asked, how do you get to the top of the falls? And it was explained to him. Sometime after that, something happened. Obviously, there was lots of water in this area. So what happened to Simon? This isn't that far from a big population base. And a lot of these cases that I talk to you about over time, I want you to understand that sometimes these cases aren't far at all from this big population base and where they can get big resources out there. Now, In Simon's case, they had HPD and Hawaii Fire Department helicopters with FLIR looking for him day and night during this time. He's never found. Okay, so that was June 29th, 1994. A year and just a little bit more later, about 13 months, July 16th, 1995, in the afternoon, a man named Wade Johnson, 23 years old, and he was a student at BYU, Hawaii. He and a friend named Eric Jones had left the day before and decided to go hiking up into an area and do an overnight trip. Now, the next morning, they got lost because fog had moved into the area and they couldn't quite see. Well, Eric had told friends of theirs that if they weren't home by a certain date at a certain time, this is exactly where you can find us. So, Eric was in that area. Wade says, hey, no, I'm not waiting. I think I can figure my way out of this. I'm going to leave. Eric goes, hey, let's just wait. Fog to clear. No, I'm going. Point of separation. Well, Wade takes off, and Eric just decides to wait because he has no idea where he's at. So he left a detailed map with friends that if he wasn't home by 9 a.m. on the 17th, to have search and rescue come look for him. Well, he didn't arrive home, and friends called HPD, and at 1 p.m., 4 hours after his friends called, a helicopter found Eric Jones exactly where he said he'd be. Well, Eric told searchers that Wade had food and water for a couple days. He had a backpack and he had a tent and sleeping bag. So he was carrying a pretty big load. He told searchers that when Wade told him he was leaving, he just had this shakingly bad feeling in him that something was negative was going to go on. Well, Wade's parents, Spencer and Claudia Johnson, arrived in Hawaii, and they tried to rally forces to look for their son. And as very sad as this is to report, that on July 21st, about the third or fourth day of the search, Hawaii Fire Department put up a Hughes 500 helicopter with 2 police officers in a bucket and a pilot. They knew that there was going to be bad air in this valley. So, let me show you a map here. This is where Mr. Johnson, Wade Johnson, disappeared. This is where Simon Owens disappeared. So HPD put into this area and they started looking. And as they got into this area, they knew that there was bad weather. But they were trying to, they were looking at the outer edges of saving a life of Wade because he'd been out there so long. So in this bucket underneath the helicopter were 2 police officers, and they were going to get taken to the top and climb down. As they went up into this valley, they encountered super strong winds. And the crash report said that the winds were so strong that it blew the carrier underneath the helicopter over the top of the helicopter, and it intertangled with the blades, brought the helicopter down. It crashed. They found the pilot in the helicopter. Several days later, they found the 2 dead police officers. Horrible. So a storm crashed the helicopter. A side note to this. I've written about many crashes of helicopters and planes in conjunction with a search and rescue. Now, they knew that there was bad weather up there when they flew into there, but the pilot thought, it wasn't going to be that bad, he could do it. So the primary search and rescue for Wade was above this area called the Sacred Pools near Pualuu, Pualuu. Essentially, when that crash happened, everything was shut down. And everybody kind of goes into a mode of trying to understand what happened and focusing on recovering the bodies. They don't want to risk any more lives. And unfortunately, Wade was never found. So here's the area where he disappeared. And then this is the magnified. Here's the area where he disappeared. Right up here. This is Waikiki, Honolulu. This is an up-close version. The helicopter crashed in this area, going in to look. Very, 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 very sad outcome. Now that was July 16th, 95. Let's go back 2 weeks earlier. July 28th, 95. Tim Pantaleoni, 33 years old, from Oneonta, New York. He had arrived in Hawaii for a 3-month trip on June 5th. His cousin was actress Pantaleoni, who participated in this effort and posted a $100,000 reward for her cousin Tim. Well, he was on a 3-month Hawaiian vacation. On June 28th, he and a friend, companion, the companion didn't want to ride the trails with him, thought the trail was too tight, so didn't go. So Tim went out alone. He was last seen riding a trail on the Mauawili Trail. And he was reported missing on June 29th, the next day. His bike was found, a maroon 10-speed, that was locked to a fence near a water tank. Massive search and rescue. It was huge. He had a sister fly into Oahu from New York. Multiple canine teams. They described it as 8 miles of dense vegetation. A horrific area to search. So, Wade Johnson disappeared up here under the Sacred Falls Trail. And Tim disappeared right here. Dead on this trail here. Right here is Honolulu. Now, remember we discussed Simon Owen, who disappeared. And just 4 miles away, Pantaleoni disappeared. And then about 10 miles further north is where the helicopter crashed. And Johnson disappeared. Now, this is a mountain range right here on the other side. So you have to cross the mountain range to get to the point where Owens disappeared. Then there's another mountain here to where Pantaleoni disappeared. Population base, huge population base. Yet the people disappeared. Here's a picture of Tim. On a 3-month vacation in Hawaii, $100,000 reward was posted by Pantaleoni. He was never found. What is happening here, folks? Lastly, I just want to show you this is Hawaii Fire Department search and rescue helicopter, the type that crashed. And I really wish to honor those people who are risking their lives to save our lives. And to lose 3 in one clean swoop is horrific. Now, why is this Hawaii special important? Because if you have a friend or a relative that's going to the islands on vacation, Do not allow them to go on these backcountry trails alone. Ever. Ever. They are dangerous. They can be treacherous. A lot of the reports talked about muddy trails that were slippery and you could fall into a gorge. Weather was tricky. It could be 90 degrees and 99% humidity, and you get up into higher elevations, it could get cold quick. These people were 23, 21, and 33 years old. Not a lot of adulthood behind them. And yeah, some could say, well, maybe they were risk takers. Well, understood. But if you're going to go to Hawaii and you're going to go off trail and you're just determined as all heck that you want to do it alone, take a personal locator beacon. Yes. Now, one thing I want to bring up is that people do things correctly. It happens. Eric Jones, in Wade Johnson's case, did a lot of things right. And he should be commended for that. He told people where he was going, told people that if he's not back by a certain time to call search and rescue, and exactly where he'd be. And he did everything right. That probably saved his life. Now, Eric can't force Wade to the ground and hold him. Wade was his own man. But Wade was smart. He wasn't pressured into leaving and going on a wild goose chase, because obviously Wade didn't know where he was going. Eric stayed put and waited. And there's a key part in search and rescue. If you keep walking, and this happens a lot, in search and rescue and you're not in one location, you could be walking in circles and be just one step in front of search and rescue. That's why it's important to stay in one place. If you have the ability to start a fire, put out some smoke, do it. But again, all your problems would be remedied quickly if you have that personal locator beacon. So if you have a young adult in your family, and I don't care where they're going to go in the world, make sure you get them something that they can carry with them when they're hiking. Now, personal locator beacons are manufactured for certain parts of the world. Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, South America, North America, Europe. Make sure you get one for the location that the person's going. The one in North America covers part of Canada as well. So, I'll keep banging that drum until I drop dead. I think it's technology that they've saved thousands and thousands of lives, and there's many stories out there about a PLB saving lives. So I encourage you to get one for a family member. There could probably be no better gift out there. And I tell people to go to Amazon.com and read the reviews on the various personal locators, and then go to that person, the company's site, and purchase it directly. You don't need to purchase one that has a monthly subscription fee. That's, if you want to, sure, but you could buy one that just activates immediately. You have others that you can send text messages via satellite so people can keep track of you as you're hiking. There's a lot of things you can buy, but essentially the bare bones one costs about $250, $300, and you activate it, stay put, sends a message up to a satellite. They send a message to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration saying where you are. So, thank you for being here. Sometimes we lose sight that all of these people had real lives. They had parents that came to try to save them, relatives that came across from the other parts of the world. And where are they? Since these incidents have happened, tens of thousands of people have hiked in the areas where these three men disappeared. How come they weren't found? How come canines didn't pick up a scent? How come FLIR didn't see him on the ground? A lot of unanswered questions. So, I'm glad you're still here. I'm glad I'm still here. And let's hope you'll see me here at the same spot next week. Have a great day.
Paulides out.